Revenge with Karen. The air in the boardroom tasted like recycled ego and cheap dry cleaning chemicals. It was 72 degrees, exactly, because I'm the one who calibrated the VAV boxes in the ceiling plenum, but judging by the sweat pooling on Brad's upper lip, you'd think we were in a sauna. Brad, the vice president of strategic synergies, or whatever bullshit title they printed on his business cards this week. He was standing at the head of the mahogany table, vibrating with that specific frequency of cocaine energy and unearned confidence that usually signals a looming HR disaster. I was standing near the door, checking the load balance on the south wing's electrical grid on my tablet, minding my own business, when his voice cracked through the room like a whip made of insecure masculinity. "Refill the toner, secretary." Brad shouted, not even looking at me. He was gesturing wildly at a pie chart that looked like it was drawn by a toddler on Adderall. "And fetch me water, sparkling, not the tap garbage." The room went quiet. The kind of quiet you get right before a boiler blows a safety valve. The other executives, a collection of gray suits and beige personalities, shifted in their ergonomic Herman Miller chairs, trying to avoid eye contact. They knew I wasn't a secretary. They knew I was the facilities controller, knew I had the keys to every door, the codes to every alarm, and the master override for the elevators. But Brad was new. Brad was a transfer from the Chicago branch, a man who thought infrastructure was just a buzzword and that buildings cleaned and regulated themselves through the magic of positive thinking. I didn't move. I just stared at the back of his head. He had that expensive haircut that's supposed to look messy, but costs $300, the kind that says, "I cheat on my taxes and my wife, but I drive a Tesla so it's okay." "Did you hear me?" He snapped, turning around. His eyes were wide, manic. "Toner, water, now. We have the Japanese investors coming in 20 minutes and this report looks like it was printed in a cave." I looked down at my ID badge. It was clipped to my belt, right next to my master key ring and my multi-tool. It clearly said Brenda, Director of Facilities. But to Brad, a woman over 40 not wearing a blazer with shoulder pads was just help. "The printer is network managed, Brad," I said, my voice flat. "It's not out of toner. You're trying to print A3 onto letter size paper. It's a formatting error, user error. Specifically, your error," he blinked. For a second, his brain tried to process the information, but it hit the firewall of his narcissism and bounced right off. "I don't care about the technicalities. Just fix it. Get the water. God, do I have to do everything myself?" I felt a muscle twitch under my left eye. This was the moment, the fork in the road. I could have explained that I was actually here to inspect the structural integrity of the window seals, which had been leaking during the last storm. I could have pulled rank. But then I looked at the chair he was guarding. The one at the head of the table, the power seat. If you're enjoying watching a man dig his own grave with a golden shovel, go ahead and hit that upvote button and subscribe to the thread. It helps keep the lights on, unlike Brad, who keeps trying to plug a space heater into a data port. Anyway, back to the carnage. I realized something in that moment, watching him sweat through his Italian silk. He didn't just disrespect me, he didn't see me. I was part of the drywall to him, and that gave me an advantage. In my line of work, the things you don't see are the things that kill you. Black mold, carbon monoxide, or a middle-aged woman with administrative access to the security mainframe. "Fine," I said. The word tasted like ash, but I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was the smile of a waitress who just spit in your soup. "I'll get your water, Brad, sparkling." I turned and walked out of the boardroom. The heavy glass door hissed shut behind me, sealing in the smell of his desperation. I didn't go to the break room. I went to the janitor's closet down the hall, not to get supplies, but to access the service panel hidden behind the mop sink. My heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a volatile fuel. It burns hot and fast. I was past that. I was in the cold fusion stage of hatred. This building was my organism. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every rattle in the AC ducts. I had spent 15 years keeping this glass and steel beast alive, nurturing it through power outages and blizzards. And this flea, this parasite in a tailored suit, thought he could bark orders at the immune system. I pulled out my tablet, the heavy-duty industrial one, not the flimsy iPads the sales team used to play Candy Crush. I brought up the floor schematics. Room 404, Boardroom B. Occupant, Brad the Dickhead Miller. I tapped the icon for the environmental controls. Current set point, 72 degrees. I looked at the sparkling water request in my mind. I looked at the timeline of the meeting with the Japanese investors. "You want water, Brad?" I whispered to the humming silence of the service closet. "I'll give you a flood, but not today. No, today I would play the long game. I would let him sit in that chair. I would let him feel powerful. Because the higher you climb, the farther you fall. I was the one who controlled the gravity in this building. I tapped the screen and lowered the temperature in the boardroom by exactly 3 degrees, just enough to make his nipples hard and his confidence shrink, but not enough to trigger an alarm. Subtlety is the key to psychological warfare. I walked back toward the break room to get his stupid water. As I poured the Perrier into a glass, I caught my reflection in the chrome of the refrigerator. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who had spent too much time fixing other people's messes. But there was something else in my eyes now, a spark. The pilot light had been relit. He wanted a secretary? Fine. I'd be the best damn secretary he ever had. I'd file everything, every unauthorized entry, every late-night office visit, every expense report that smelled like tequila and bad decisions. I would document his entire existence until I had enough paper to bury him alive. I walked back into the boardroom, set the glass down on a coaster in front of him, and watched him ignore me completely as he continued to shout at his team. About time, he muttered, taking a sip. "You're welcome," I said softly. I looked at the empty chair at the far end of the table, my usual spot for facility updates. I didn't sit there. I stood against the back wall, merging with the shadows, becoming one with the building. Enjoy the sparkling water, Brad, I thought. It's the last clear thing you're going to see for a long time. Most people think a skyscraper sleeps. They think when the lights click off at 6 p.m. and the commuters flood the subway, the building just stands there, dormant, waiting for the sunrise. That's because most people are idiots. A building never sleeps. It breathes. It gurgles. It digests. The AC handlers shift into night mode. The elevators perform their self-diagnostic dances. The data packets keep flowing through the fiber optic veins like cholesterol in a greasy artery. I was in the basement, 3 levels below the street, in the security command center. It smells different down here, like ozone, stale coffee, and the specific electromagnetic hum of 1,000 hard drives spinning in unison. This was my church. And tonight, I was hearing confessions. "You seeing this, Brenda?" That was Mike, the night shift head of security. Mike was a former Marine who looked like a vending machine with a mustache. He was eating a ham sandwich that looked about as appetizing as a drywall sponge, watching the wall of monitors. "I see it, Mike," I said, leaning over his shoulder. On screen 4, a grainy black and white feed showed the executive elevator lobby on the 40th floor. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. 3 nights ago. The elevator door slid open, and out walked Brad. Wasn't alone. He was stumbling, his arm draped around a woman who definitely wasn't his wife, and she definitely didn't work here. She looked like she was auditioning for a music video about bad life choices. "That's the 3rd time this week," Mike grunted, wiping mayo off his lip. "Badge ID verifies it's him. But here's the kicker. Look whose badge she's using to get past the turnstiles." I squinted at the log scrolling on the left monitor. "Guest access override authorized by sysadmin." "He's using the emergency admin override," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "That code is for fire marshals and bomb squads, not for sneaking in Tinder dates." "It gets better," Mike said, clicking a mouse that looked like a toy in his massive hand. "Check the server room logs." My stomach did a slow roll. The server room on the 40th floor wasn't just a closet with blinking lights. It housed the proprietary trading algorithms for 2 of our biggest tenants. It was a fortress, or it was supposed to be. The log showed an entry at 12:15 a.m. "Access granted, B. Miller. Why is the VP of strategy going into the high-frequency trading server room at midnight?" I asked, though I already had a sickening feeling I knew the answer. He wasn't trading. He wasn't smart enough to steal data. "Switch to camera 40B, I ordered. Mike clicked and flickered. The interior of the server room appeared. It was dark, illuminated only by the blue LEDs of the racks. In the corner, where the heat exhaust vents create a warm draft, were 2 figures, Brad and his date. "Oh, for the love of God," I groaned, pressing my palms into my eyes. "He's using the server room as a Motel 6 because it's warm, and because it's soundproof," Mike added helpfully. "The cooling fans drown out the noise. That creates a static discharge." I snapped, the technician in me more offended than the moralist. "Synthetic fabrics, friction, sensitive electronics, 1 spark, and he wipes out millions of dollars in transaction data. The man is a walking EMP device." I stared at the screen. The disrespect was astronomical. This wasn't just gross, it was negligent. It was a liability nightmare wrapped in a cheap suit. "Do I burn him?" Mike asked, his finger hovering over the save clip button. "No," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Not yet. If we report this now, he'll spin it. He'll say he was doing a late-night security audit and the girl was a consultant. He's slippery. He's got the board wrapped around his finger because he promised them a 20% cost reduction by Q4. Cost reduction? Mike snorted. How? By firing the cleaning crew and making us lick the floors. By squeezing the tenants, I said, the pieces clicking together in my head. Bringing in unauthorized guests, risking the infrastructure, and probably charging the company for the Uber rides. But that's small potatoes. If he's this reckless with the physical security, imagine what he's doing with the contracts. I pulled my master tablet out of its holster. I opened the badge access history file. I filtered by B. Miller and set the range to the last 6 months. The screen filled with red flags, unauthorized entries. After hours overrides, accessing floors he had no business being on. Mike, I said, looking him in the eye, I want you to enable full logging, no deletions. If he swipes his badge to buy a Snickers bar, I want to know about it. If he sneezes near a card reader, I want a timestamp. You got it, boss, Mike said. What are you going to do? I'm going to let him hang himself, I said, watching the grainy image of Brad stumbling back into the elevator, his tie undone, looking like a triumphant rooster who just raided the hen house. But I'm going to supply the rope, and the drop table, and the executioner. I walked over to the main server rack. The lights blinked in a soothing rhythm. Green, green, amber, green. That amber light bothered me. It was a warning. A pressure buildup. He thinks he owns this place, I muttered, tracing a cable with my finger. He thinks because his name is on the door, he controls the room. Forgot that I control the air he breathes, the water he drinks, and the lock that keeps him safe. I tapped my tablet. I flagged the video file, evidence cache 001. Keep watching him, Mike, I said, heading for the door. I have some leases to read. Were you going? To check the trash, I said. You can tell a lot about a man by what he throws away when he thinks nobody is looking. I left the cool sanctuary of the command center and headed for the freight elevator. Ride up was slow and clanking. The building was groaning tonight. It knew. It knew there was a virus in the system, and it was waiting for me to administer the antibiotic. The 12th floor used to smell like lavender diffusers and ambitious optimism. It was the incubator wing, a space I had personally curated for small startups. I'd fought the old board for 3 years to get favorable lease terms for these companies, mostly women-led tech firms, graphic designers, people trying to build something real in a world of drop-shipping scammers. Now, the 12th floor smelled like packing tape and defeat. I stepped off the elevator and almost tripped over a crate of monitors. The hallway was a graveyard of office supplies. Ergonomic chairs were piled up like dead beetles. Whiteboards that used to be covered in brainstorms about community outreach and sustainable growth were now being wiped clean, leaving only ghostly smudges of their dreams. Brad's expansion plan. That's what he called it. He was evicting 6 tenants, paying tenants, mind you, to make room for his new Synergy Lounge and a private gym for the executives. Apparently, the gym on the 2nd floor wasn't exclusive enough because the janitors were allowed to use it on their breaks. Brenda, I turned to see Sarah. She ran a nonprofit that coded apps for dyslexic kids. She was 28, brilliant, currently looked like she had gone 12 rounds with a weeping willow. She was holding a box of files, her knuckles white. Hey, Sarah, I said, my voice softer than it had been in years. I saw the notice. He gave us 3 days, she said, her voice trembling. 3 days, Brenda. The lease says 30, but he invoked some emergency infrastructure clause. Said the floor needed urgent asbestos abatement. I felt the rage boil up in my throat like acid reflux. Asbestos? Sarah, I abated this floor myself in 2008. I have the certificates. The air in here is cleaner than a Mormon wedding. He showed us a report, she said, tears finally spilling over. Signed by some inspector we've never heard of. Said if we didn't vacate immediately, he'd lock us out and seize our equipment for safety reasons. I walked over to the wall and ran my hand along the drywall. It was cool, smooth, no asbestos. Just pure, adulterated bullshit. Brad was forging safety reports. That wasn't just unethical, that was a felony. That was messing with my building's permanent record. He lied, I said, loud enough for the movers to hear. There's no asbestos. He just wants the floor space because his ego is too fat to fit in his current office. Sarah dropped the box. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. It doesn't matter, Brenda. We can't afford a lawyer to fight him. He knows that. He smirked when he handed me the notice. He said, business is for the big dogs, sweetheart. Go play at home. I looked at Sarah. I looked at the dismantled office. I remembered fixing the AC unit in her server room on a Sunday because she couldn't afford the overtime rate. I remembered her bringing me cupcakes when her first app launched. He said that? I asked. The air around me seemed to drop 10 degrees. Yeah. And then he asked if you were going to help us pack. It's the help loves manual labor. That was it, the snap. The sound of a suspension cable giving way. Put the box down, Sarah, I said. I have to get this to the truck. Put the box down. She stared at me. She saw something in my face that made her take a step back. It wasn't the Brenda who fixed toilets. It was the Brenda who knew how to wire a high-voltage transformer and make it look like an accident. You're not leaving, I said. Well, you are for now. Have to play along. But don't cancel your internet service. Don't change your mailing address. Why? Because, I said, pulling a roll of heavy-duty duct tape from my belt loop, purely out of habit. Brad thinks he's playing Monopoly. He thinks he can just buy up the board and build hotels. But he forgot that I'm the banker, and I'm also the one who decides if the dice are loaded. I walked through the chaos of the move, spotting Brad standing near the windows at the far end of the hall. He was laughing into his phone, watching the women pack. He was wearing that grin, the one that looked like a cracked windshield. I approached him. He didn't see me until I was 2 feet away. Ah, Brenda, he chirped, not even bothering to cover the mouthpiece. Here to sweep up the tears. Make sure you get the corners. Just checking the load-bearing walls, Brad, I said, my voice sickly sweet. Wouldn't want anything to collapse unexpectedly. We're clearing out the dead wood, he said, gesturing at Sarah. This is prime real estate. I've got a crypto mining startup coming in next week. Triple the rent, cash upfront. Crypto, I repeated, energy intensive, heat generating. Don't bore me with the physics, Brenda. Just make sure the outlets work. He turned his back on me. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the building. The 12th floor was crying out in pain. Didn't want crypto bros, it wanted Sarah. The outlets will work, Brad, I whispered to his back. But you might find the current a little unstable. I walked back to Sarah. I handed her a business card, not mine, a lawyer's. Who is this? She asked. A shark, I said. A shark who owes me a favor because I didn't report his illegal cigar humidor to the fire department. Call him. Tell him Brenda sent you. Tell him to look at the force majeure clause in your lease, and then ask him to cross-reference it with the building's official hazardous materials log. The log? The one I keep, I said, tapping my tablet. The one that proves this floor is clean. The one that proves Brad is lying. Sarah looked at me, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle in a draft. You do that for us, you could get fired. I laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. Sarah, honey, he can't fire me. Doesn't even know what I actually do. He thinks I'm the janitor. But when the dust settles, he's going to find out that I'm the one holding the broom and the trash bag. I walked to the freight elevator, pressing the button with authority. The doors opened, revealing the dark, scarred interior. He said you couldn't stop him, a young coder whispered as I passed. I stopped and looked back at the wreckage of the 12th floor. He's not wrong, I said. I can't stop him. But gravity can. I'm about to cut the elevator cable. There's a space between the drop ceiling of the 45th floor and the concrete slab of the roof called the interstitial void. It's filled with fiberglass insulation that makes your skin itch for 3 days. Rat traps that haven't been checked since the Clinton administration, and high-velocity air ducts. It's also the most acoustically perfect spot in the entire skyscraper if you want to hear what's happening in the executive penthouse suite without being seen. I was up there, officially, to inspect the damper actuators. Unofficially, I was lying on my belly in the dust, breathing through a mask, listening to Brad talk on his private line. The vent grill in his office was loose. I'd loosened it myself with a dime an hour ago. Yeah, bro, it's a done deal. Brad's voice drifted up through the ductwork, tinny but clear. I'm guttering the vendor list. All of them, cleaning, security, maintenance. We're terminating the current contracts effective 1st of the month. My heart hammered against the galvanized steel of the duct. He was talking about my contracts, the people I'd vetted, the cleaning lady, Maria, who had 3 kids in college, Mike, the security guard, AC contractors who knew exactly how to shim the cooling tower so it didn't vibrate the whole building. Who am I bringing in? Brad laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. Apex Solutions. Yeah, the LLC you set up in Delaware. Look, nobody checks the vendor background. I sign the PO, you invoice us for 20% over market, we split the difference. It's free money, Chad. I'm telling you, this building is a cash cow and nobody's milking it. I froze. Wasn't just incompetent, he was embezzling. He was going to fire my team, my family, to funnel money to some frat buddy named Chad in Delaware. What about the current facilities director? Brad paused. Who, Brenda, the gargoyle in the basement? Please, she's a glorified super. I'll demote her to night shift or just make her life so miserable she quits. She doesn't have the spine to fight back. She's just staff. I carefully, silently, crawled backward out of the void. My knees scraped against the concrete runners. My lungs burned with dust and rage. I didn't just have a smoking gun, I had the bullet, the casing, and the receipt for the gunpowder. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a booth at Lou's Diner across town. It was the kind of place where the menu is sticky and the coffee tastes like battery acid. Perfect. Across from me sat Saul. Saul was a lawyer who looked like a bullfrog in a suit that was 2 sizes too small. He was the shark I'd told Sarah about. So Saul said, drowning a fry in ketchup, "Let me get this straight. You want to buy the building?" "No," I said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. "I don't have the capital to buy the high-rise, Saul. I'm a facilities manager, not Elon Musk. I want to buy the contracts." Saul opened the envelope. He scanned the papers. "Master Facilities Agreement? The one Brad is trying to terminate. Read the fine print on page 50, clause 12b, I said, taking a sip of the terrible coffee. The right of first refusal combined with the vendor continuity protocol. Saul squinted. It says that if the building ownership attempts to terminate critical infrastructure services without cause, current bondholding service provider has the option to assume control of the operational LLC to prevent catastrophic failure. Exactly, I said. Brad is trying to bring in Apex Solutions, an entity with 0 credit history, 0 insurance, and 0 staff. That constitutes a catastrophic risk to the asset. And who is the current bondholding service provider? Saul asked. I smiled. It was a jagged, feral smile. Me. Well, Titan Infrastructure Group, which is an LLC I formed 10 years ago to handle the liability insurance for the AC upgrades. Saul choked on a fry. You own the company that insures the building's guts. I own the guts, Saul. The owners just rent the skin. I leaned forward. I want you to exercise that clause. I want you to execute a hostile takeover of the facilities management contract. I want it locked down so tight that even God himself couldn't change a light bulb without my signature. This is going to cost you, Saul warned. Legal fees, filings. Brad will fight it. Brad won't fight it, I said, pulling a USB drive from my pocket, because Brad is currently soliciting kickbacks from a shell company in Delaware. And if he tries to fight me, this recording goes to the SEC, the IRS, and his wife. In that order, Saul looked at the USB drive. Then he looked at me. A slow grin spread across his wide face. Brenda, I thought you were just the lady who fixed my AC that one time. I am, I said, standing up and throwing a 20 on the table. And right now, the AC is set to deep freeze. I walked out of the diner. The sun was shining, but all I could see were storm clouds gathering over my building. Brad wanted to play dirty? Fine. I grew up in a trailer park where we fixed leaks with chewing gum and settled disputes with tire irons. He was bringing a spreadsheet to a knife fight. I wasn't just going to stop him. I was going to foreclose on his reality. Let's rewind. Because you don't wake up one morning and decide to overthrow a corporate tyrant without a little prep work. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment revenge plot. This was architectural. 6 months ago, long before Brad arrived with his sparkling water addiction, I was sitting in the basement archives. The archives is a generous term for a room that smells like wet cardboard and despair, filled with filing cabinets that contain the soul of the building. I was looking for a schematic for the sewage ejector pumps. Sexy, I know, when I found the master deed of operations. It was a dusty binder from 1998. The original developers were paranoid, were terrified of a hostile takeover by foreign investors, so they baked in a poison pill for the operational side of the building. Essentially, the building's structure, the concrete, the glass, and the building's operation, the power, the water, the security, were 2 separate legal entities. The operations contract was up for renewal. And the current ownership group, a bunch of absent billionaires who lived on yachts in Monaco, didn't care who ran it, as long as the toilets flushed. I looked at my bank account. I had savings, I had a pension. I had the inheritance from my dad, the one whose Vietnam jacket Karen, sorry, wrong story, Brad would eventually insult. It wasn't by a skyscraper money, but it was by an obscure LLC money. I formed Titan Infrastructure Group. I registered it to a P.O. box in the state. I listed myself as the silent partner. And then I bid on the renewal contract. I lowballed it, just enough to be attractive, but not enough to look suspicious. I promised efficiency upgrades and legacy knowledge retention. The board in Monaco rubber-stamped it without even reading the name of the signatory. They just saw the bottom line. So, for the last 5 months, technically speaking, I haven't just been the facilities director. I have been the vendor. the exclusive, irrevocable, bond-insured provider of everything that makes the building habitable. Back to the present. I sat in my office, the real one, behind the boiler room, not the cubicle Brad thought I occupied. I had the asset transfer documents on my desk. They were signed, notarized, and filed with the county clerk as of this morning. Brad was upstairs right now, probably firing the window washers to replace them with his cousin's drone company or something equally stupid. He thought he held the keys. I looked at the key ring on my desk. Master key. You really did it, Mike said, standing in the doorway. He looked nervous. You bought the contract? I didn't just buy it, Mike. I encased it in concrete, I said, running my hand over the embossed seal. Technically, Brad is now my client. I provide the environment in which he exists. If I decide to stop providing it, he ceases to exist, corporately speaking. So why haven't you crushed him yet? Mike asked. Why let him evict Sarah? I let him humiliate you in the meeting. Because of the performance default clause, I said, pointing to a paragraph dense with legalese. I can only trigger the hostile management takeover, the part where I legally ban him from the premises, if I can prove he is actively damaging the asset. I need him to break something big. I need him to create a liability so massive that the insurance carrier, which is also me, basically, has no choice but to intervene. Sarah wasn't enough? Sarah was a tragedy, I said, my voice hardening. But legally, she was just a tenant dispute. I need him to endanger the building itself. The server room, Mike realized, the static risk. Getting warmer, I said. But I need more. I need him to panic. I need him to try to bypass a safety system during a critical event. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Friday, the merger meeting. Japanese investors were coming back to sign the final deal. Brad needed the building to look perfect. He needed the lights to shine, the AC to hum, and the security to be invisible. Friday, I whispered. On Friday, we're going to have a little technical difficulty. What kind of difficulty? Mike asked, grinning. The kind that requires a manual override, I said. The kind that Brad will try to fix himself because he doesn't trust the help. And when he touches that system, he triggers the trap. I picked up my radio. Mike, make sure the backup generators are offline for maintenance on Friday morning. But Brenda, Mike hesitated. If the power dips, exactly, I said. If the power dips, the building goes into lockdown mode, and the only person with the code to lift it will be sitting in the janitor's closet waiting for an apology. You're scary, boss. I'm not scary, Mike, I said, lighting a cigarette. One vice I allowed myself in this concrete bunker. I'm just compliant, maliciously compliant. Thursday afternoon, the calm before the merger. The office hummed with frantic energy. Junior analysts were running around like headless chickens, printing collated binders that nobody would ever read. I was up on the 40th floor, changing a ballast in a fluorescent light fixture. Perched on my ladder, I was invisible. People don't look up. They don't look at the person in the gray jumpsuit. They just see the uniform and their eyes slide right off. I don't care what the data says, Kevin. Brad's voice shattered the hum. He was standing in the middle of the bullpen, looming over a kid who couldn't have been more than 22. Kevin, I knew Kevin. Kevin always held the elevator door. Kevin recycled his soda cans. But sir, Kevin stammered, holding up a tablet. The occupancy sensors, numbers for the prospectus, are inflated. If we tell the investors the building is at 98% occupancy when it's actually at 60% because you evicted the 12th floor, that's fraud. The room went dead silent. The F word, fraud. Brad's face turned a shade of purple usually reserved for bruised plums. Are you a lawyer, Kevin? No, sir, I'm a data analyst. Then stop analyzing and start packing, Brad hissed. You're fired. Get your shit and get out. Subordination. And if I hear you breathed a word of this to anyone, I'll sue you for breach of NDA so fast your grandchildren will be paying my legal fees. Kevin looked like he'd been slapped. He slowly started to gather his things. From the top of my ladder, I felt a cold, metallic calm settle over me. He wasn't just cooking the books, he was destroying a kid's career to do it. I climbed down the ladder slowly. I didn't say a word. I walked past Kevin's desk. As I passed, I dropped a small, folded piece of paper into his box. It wasn't a note. It was a QR code, a direct link to the whistleblower portal of the building's oversight committee, which, thanks to my corporate restructuring, routed directly to my encrypted email server. I walked straight to the elevator and hit the button for the basement. Time, Mike asked as soon as I walked into the command center. Now, I said. Initiate the incident report. I sat at the main terminal. I cracked my knuckles. It was time to write the document that would end him. Incident report #404 fatal subject. Executive misconduct / infrastructure sabotage / fraudulent data manipulation evidence attached. Audio logs, ventilation, video logs, server room, badge access, unauthorized entry, witness statement, Kevin vs. Goliath. I didn't sign it Brenda, the secretary. I signed it Titan Infrastructure Group Oversight Division. Mike, I said, my voice steady, prepare the lockout protocol. Code red, you want to lock him out now? No, I said, we wait for the meeting. We wait until he's sitting across from the Japanese investors. We wait until he tries to show them the state-of-the-art control systems. I pulled up the building's automation software. I found the profile for the boardroom. I wrote a simple script, a logic bomb. IF user equals B Miller attempt system override, then execute total shutdown sequence. He wants to show them he's in control, I said, typing the code with furious precision. So we're going to give him the controls, all of them, and we're going to watch them burn his fingers. I hit enter. The code compiled. The trap was set. What about Kevin? Mike asked. I already texted Saul, I said. Kevin is going to be our star witness. Once we own the operational lease fully, Kevin is going to be the new VP of strategy. Because unlike Brad, Kevin knows how to read a damn sensor. I leaned back in my chair. The screens around me glowed with the lifeblood of the building. Sleep tight, Brad, I whispered. Tomorrow, the building wakes up, and she's cranky. Friday, 9:00 a.m. The boardroom was pristine. The air was crisp. The view of the city was $1,000,000 perfect. Brad was sweating like a sinner in church. The Japanese delegation sat on one side of the table. 3 men, 1 woman, impeccable suits, terrifyingly quiet. They had the binders, the fake ones, open in front of them. Brad was performing. He was pointing at the screen, using words like vertical integration and seamless operational synergy. As you can see, Brad boomed, his voice echoing slightly too loud. I've optimized the tenant flow and reduced overhead by 30%. The building practically runs itself. I was standing in my usual spot by the door. But today, I wasn't wearing my gray jumpsuit. I was wearing a navy blazer, tailored, sharp. I had traded the tool belt for tablet. Brad shot me a glare. He noticed the clothes. Confusion flickered in his eyes for a microsecond, but he squashed it. And here, Brad continued, tapping the smart screen on the wall. We have the centralized control dashboard. I can monitor every aspect of the facility from this room. He didn't know how to use the dashboard. He was just clicking on random icons that the IT guys had set up as a demo mode. Mr. Miller, the lead investor, Mr. Tanaka, spoke up. His voice was quiet but commanded instant silence. We have reviewed the occupancy data. There seemed to be discrepancies regarding the 12th floor. Had froze discrepancies? Impossible. Just a glitch in the reporting software. I assure you the revenue stream is solid. And the infrastructure? Tanaka asked. We understand there were rumors of asbestos. Lies. Brad laughed nervously. Competitor sabotage. This building is pristine. In fact, he turned to me. The reflex kicked in. When in doubt, abuse the help. Brenda, coffee for our guests, and make it quick. We have serious business to discuss. The room went deadly quiet. Tanaka looked at me, then back at Brad. In Japan, you don't treat senior staff like servants. Brad didn't know that. Brad didn't know anything. I didn't move toward the coffee machine. Did you hear me? Brad snapped, his veneer of control cracking. Coffee, I took 1 step forward. My heels clicked on the marble floor. A sharp, deliberate sound. No, I said. Brad's jaw dropped. Excuse me? I said no, Brad. I looked at him, calm, cold, and utterly terrifying. Not getting the coffee. And neither are you. You're fired. He screamed, spit flying. Get out, security, get security in here. Excellent idea, I said. I pulled my radio from my blazer pocket. Mike, you're up. The double doors swung open. But it wasn't just Mike. It was Mike, 2 uniformed officers, and Saul. Brad looked at them, then at me. What is this, a mutiny? No, Brad, I said, walking toward the head of the table. It's an eviction. I turned to Mr. Tanaka. I bowed slightly. Mr. Tanaka, I apologize for the deception. The data you have is incorrect. The occupancy is 60%. The 12th floor was illegally cleared, and the man standing before you has been falsifying safety reports for 3 months. She's lying. Brad shrieked. She's a disgruntled janitor. She's crazy. Mr. Miller, I said, my voice cutting through his panic like a laser. Please sit down. You're in my chair. Silence in the room was heavy enough to crush a diamond. Brad stared at me. He looked like a man trying to read a map in a language he didn't speak. Your chair? He sputtered. A vein in his forehead was throbbing. I didn't answer. I just walked past him. I could smell his fear. It smelled like sour deodorant. I reached the head of the table. I placed my tablet down on the mahogany surface. It made a solid thud. Security, remove her. Brad yelled at Mike. Mike folded his massive arms. Sorry, sir. I take my orders from the building operator. That's not you. Brad looked at the investors. I am the vice president. I sign the checks. Actually, I said, tapping my tablet, you sign the requisition forms. I sign the checks. I swiped a finger across my screen. Instantaneously, the room changed. The lighting shifted from the harsh, cold fluorescent setting Brad preferred to a warm, amber glow, the setting I knew the investors preferred. Blinds on the south window automatically lowered to cut the glare hitting Mr. Tanaka's face. The demo mode on the main screen vanished, replaced by a live, scrolling feed of the building's actual diagnostics. Red lines, error codes, unauthorized access warnings, all tagged with user B. Miller. What are you doing? Brad whispered. I'm running a diagnostic, I said, demonstrating the seamless operational synergy you were bragging about. I tapped another icon. Projector displayed the video feed from the server room, the one of Brad and his consultant. The room gasped. It wasn't explicit, but it was damning. The timestamp, the location, the open server rack, that's a deepfake. Brad stammered, backing away, and this, I swiped again. The screen showed the email thread between Brad and Apex Solutions. The kickback scheme, the dollar amounts, that's private correspondence. It was sent on the building's network, I said, finally taking the seat. I sat down slowly, deliberately. The leather creaked. It felt right, per the terms of service you signed, but didn't read. All data on the network is property of the facility's directorate for security auditing. I am the directorate. I looked up at him. He was standing, trembling, stripped of his power, his title, and his dignity. You wanted to know why the AC wasn't working, Brad? I asked conversationally. Because you were trying to run a complex ecosystem like a lemonade stand. You treated the building like a piggy bank and the people like trash. And the thing about trash, Brad? Eventually, someone has to take it out. Mr. Tanaka closed his binder. He looked at Brad with absolute disgust. Mr. Miller, it appears we have been negotiating with the wrong entity. He turned to me. Miss Brenda, I said, Brenda Vance, owner of Titan Infrastructure. And as of this morning, sole lien holder on the building's operational capacity. Miss Vance, Tanaka nodded. We should talk, we will, I said. But first we have some housekeeping to do. Ma'am, are we ready to lock up? Mike asked, his voice booming in the quiet room. I looked at Brad. He was deflated. The cocaine energy was gone, replaced by the hollow shock of a man realizing his entire identity was a rental, and the lease just expired. Yes, Mike, I said. But first, remove the trespasser. Had blinked, trespasser? I have an office. Not anymore, Saul stepped forward, handing Brad a thick stack of papers. This is a cease and desist, a notice of termination for cause, and a restraining order barring you from entering any property managed by Titan Infrastructure. Which, unfortunately for you, includes this building, the parking garage, and the coffee shop in the lobby. You can't do this, Brad whispered. I'm the VP. You were the VP, I corrected. Now, reliability. Your badge has been deactivated. Your login is wiped. Your car has been towed from the executive spot because, technically, you don't work here anymore. Brad looked at the Japanese investors, pleading with his eyes. They didn't even look at him. They were looking at me. Get him out, I said. Mike and the officers stepped forward. They didn't drag him, that would have been too dramatic. They just escorted him. They flanked him like a prisoner of war. Brad walked out, his shoulders slumped, his fancy suit looking suddenly too big for him. The door closed. The silence was beautiful. So Mr. Tanaka said, breaking the spell, you control the facility, every bolt, I said, and I can assure you the 12th floor will be restored to its original tenants by Monday. The occupancy data you saw was falsified. We are at 98% capacity with the rightful tenants. And the asbestos? Non-existent, I said. I'll send you the real logs. The meeting ended an hour later. The deal was signed, not with Brad's shell company, but with a direct oversight clause that gave me veto power over infrastructure changes. I walked out of the boardroom. The office was quiet. Word travels fast in a building. The junior analysts were staring at me, not through me, at me. I walked to the elevator and went down to the lobby. The sun was setting. I saw Sarah standing outside with a box, looking confused. Sarah, I called out. She turned. Brenda, I got a call from a lawyer named Saul, he said. He said we can go back up, you can go back up, I said, smiling. And rent is frozen for the next 2 years. Infrastructure apology. She hugged me. It was a real hug. Thank you. How did you do it? I just fixed the leak, I said. I walked back inside. The lobby was empty. The lights were dimming for the night mode. I pulled out my tablet. I tapped the screen. Lights flickered in a wave, floor by floor, a cascading salute from the building to its master. I wasn't just the secretary. I was the ghost in the machine. And for the first time in months, the machine was running smooth. I walked toward the janitor's closet to put my tools away. I had a bottle of whiskey hidden behind the bleach. Turns out, I muttered to the empty hallway, Channeling my inner grumpy Ohioan, revenge is a dish best served cold, preferably at 68 degrees with 40% humidity. I took a sip. We're all healed.
And that's the story. Take care of yourselves out there. The world's unpredictable enough.